I was standing 20 feet away when she found out. I watched the agent shake his head. I watched her jaw tighten. I watched her spin around, scanning that crowded port like she was looking for something she could still control. And then she found me. We looked at each other across the noise and the crowd and everything that had happened between us. I didn't smile, I didn't wave, I didn't say a word. I just picked up my boarding pass, turned to my friend May and said, "Ready?" And we walked through that gate together. My name is Dorothy Callahan. Most people call me Dot. I'm 68 years old. I live in Franklin, Tennessee. And for 30 years, I ran a bakery with my bare hands and my husband's faith in me. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments. And please stay with me until the end. I want to start with a Saturday morning. Not the Saturday everything fell apart, a different one. April 2022. The first Saturday after I sold the bakery, I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, same as I had every single day for 30 years. My hand reached for the apron on the hook by the bedroom door before my eyes were even open. It was muscle memory. 30 years of 4:30 mornings had written it straight into my body. And then I remembered there was no bakery anymore. I lay there in the dark and I stared at the ceiling and I did not move for 2.5 hours. Not because I was sad, though I was. Not because I was lost, though I was that too. I stayed still because for the first time in 3 decades, nobody needed me to be anywhere. Nobody was waiting on me. No dough to proof, no cases to stock, no sign to flip from closed to open. The world was just going to keep spinning without Callahan's Bakery in it. And I had no idea who I was without that place. Gerald used to say I built that bakery out of stubbornness and cinnamon. He wasn't wrong on either count. We opened Callahan's in 1994 with $3,200, a secondhand oven we bought from a restaurant that had gone under, and absolutely zero business experience between the two of us. Gerald was an engineer by trade. He knew load-bearing calculations and tensile strength. He did not know the difference between bread flour and all-purpose. But he showed up every single night after his day job, and he mopped floors, and he counted inventory, and he sat across from me at that little table in the back when I wanted to quit. And he said every single time, "One more week, Dot. Let's give it one more week." We gave it 30 years of weeks. The bakery was never fancy. 12 tables, a chalkboard menu, a glass case that Gerald built himself on a long weekend because we couldn't afford to buy one. We were not the kind of place that got written up in magazines. We were the kind of place where the same people came every Saturday morning and ordered the same thing, and we knew their names and their kids' names, and which ones took their coffee black. That meant something to me. That still means something to me. When Gerald had his first mild stroke in 2019, the doctor sat us down and used words like lifestyle adjustments and reduced stress. Gerald nodded along very seriously the whole time. Then we got in the car and he reached into the back seat and pulled out a travel brochure he had folded up in his jacket pocket. Alaska cruise, 7 days, inside passage. He had dog-eared a page, written in pencil in the margin, in his neat engineer's handwriting. "Someday, Dot, when the kids are settled." I looked at that brochure and I looked at him and I said, "Gerald, your legs are fine." He grinned at me, that grin. Lord, I could write a whole book about that man's grin. "I know my legs are fine," he said. "I just want to make sure we actually go, before we run out of some days." I told him we had plenty of some days left. I was wrong about that. We were both wrong about that. Gerald passed in March of 2021, second stroke. It happened fast, the way these things sometimes do, faster than any of us were ready for, and I say that knowing you can never really be ready. He was 65 years old. He still had that brochure in his desk drawer. I sold the bakery the following year. Took me a while to make the decision, but once I made it, I knew it was right. The place was Gerald's and mine together. Without him in it, it was just a building with an oven. I sold the equipment, the brand, the recipes. I kept one thing, his work apron, dark blue canvas, still had flour on the right pocket from the last time he wore it. I folded it and put it in my dresser, and I have not washed it. Between the sale and my personal savings, I walked away with $28,000. I did not buy a new car.
I did not redo the kitchen. I opened a separate savings account, and in my phone, I labeled it Gerald's trip because I had made a decision. I was going to take our family to Alaska. I was going to stand in the place Gerald had circled in that brochure, and I was going to bring him with me the only way I still could. 8 cabins for 9 of us. Or so I thought. Our son Michael was 42 at the time. He lives in Portland, Oregon, with his wife Rebecca and their 2 kids, Lily, who was 8 then, and Owen, who was 5. Michael is a good man. I want to be clear about that because this story is going to get complicated, and I don't want you to think I'm just a bitter old woman with a grudge. Michael is a good man who loves his children and works hard and calls me my birthday and remembers that I don't like mushrooms. He has a good heart. He also has never been great at saying no to people who scare him a little. And Rebecca, well, Rebecca did not scare me, but I understood early on why she scared him. I want to be fair here because fair matters to me. Rebecca is not a villain. She is a very organized, very capable woman who likes things done a certain way and has very little patience for how other people might want to do them. She is good at her job. She loves her children. She is an excellent event planner, which I say without any sarcasm at all because she genuinely is. She is also the kind of person who can make you feel like a guest in your own family without ever raising her voice. It happens slowly. That's the thing nobody warns you about. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not one big moment where someone looks you in the eye and says, "You don't belong here anymore." It's smaller than that. It's quieter. It's the way a door can swing shut. So gradually you don't even notice the light changing until you're standing in the dark. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In January of 2023, I called a travel agent named Sandra. I had gotten her name from a woman at my church who said Sandra had planned her whole family reunion cruise, and not a single person ended up in the wrong cabin, which I thought was a pretty high standard, and I respected it. I told Sandra what I wanted. Alaska, inside passage, 7 days, September 2024, to give everyone time to arrange schedules. Enough cabins for the whole family. I told her about Gerald. I told her about the brochure. Sandra was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Miss Callahan, I am going to make this the trip he would have wanted." And I believed her, and she was right, and I am grateful to that woman to this day. I booked everything under my own name because the whole things was mine financially and emotionally and in every other way. Michael offered once to chip in, and I told him to save his money for the kids' college. He said, "Mom, you sure?" And I said I was sure. That was that. One thing I did that I did not mention to Michael or anyone else. When Sandra asked about travel insurance, I almost said no, because it was an extra $840, and the trip was already expensive. But then I heard Gerald's voice in my head as clear as if he were sitting right next to me. He used to say, "A good engineer never assumes everything goes right, Dot. Build in a margin for error. Always have a backup plan." So I bought the insurance, canceled them for any reason, $840 charged to my own card, not because I thought anything would go wrong, just because Gerald would have wanted me to have it. I didn't know then how right he was. For the next several months, planning that trip was the best thing in my life. I'm not ashamed to say that. I'm a 67-year-old widow living alone in a house that used to have a lot more noise in it, and having something to look forward to, something big and real and full of meaning that kept me going on the quiet days. I researched the ports, Juneau, Skagway, Ketchikan, Glacier Bay. I learned what time of year the humpbacks were most active. I found out that in September, you had a real shot at seeing the northern lights if the weather cooperated. I made a list of shore excursions I thought Lily would love, because that girl has always had Gerald's sense of wonder about the natural world, and I wanted her to see glaciers and eagles and the kind of wild beauty that doesn't exist in Portland, Oregon. I thought about Gerald every single day I planned it. I thought about standing on that deck with my son beside me and my grandchildren running to the railing to see something magnificent. And I thought about how I would feel in that moment and how Gerald would have looked. That grin of his turned up toward the sky. That was the dream I was building. That was what $28,000 in 2 years of my life were going toward. I want you to hold that image for a minute. because what comes next is going to be hard. And I need you to understand what I was protecting. By August of 2024, everything was set. Final payment went through on a Wednesday afternoon. I sat at my kitchen table and watched the confirmation email come in, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Like I had actually done something, like I had taken all that grief and all that loss and turned it into something Gerald would have been proud of. I texted Michael, "Final payment done. Can't believe we're really doing this." He wrote back 12 minutes later, "Can't wait, Mom." That was the last easy thing between us for a while. Because 9 days before we were supposed to board that ship, at 10:47 in the evening on a Wednesday in August, my phone buzzed on that same kitchen table, and everything I had built over 2 years came apart in a text message. But before I tell you what that message said, I need to tell you about the signs I missed, because they were there. They had always been there. I just didn't want to see them. The first sign was a Christmas sweater. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds small. And maybe it was small. Maybe I should have let it go and moved on and not thought about it again. But the thing about small things is that they add up. And when you're looking back, trying to figure out exactly when you stopped being part of something, it's always the small things that tell the real story. December 2022. I drove up to Portland for Christmas. 6 hours in the car by myself, which I didn't mind. I actually liked driving alone. Gerald used to say I was the only person he knew who treated a long drive like a vacation. I had my coffee in the cup holder and an old country station on the radio, and I was genuinely happy to be going. I pulled up to Michael and Rebecca's house, and through the front window, I could see everyone moving around inside. Warm light, kids running. That feeling you get when you're almost somewhere good. I knocked. Michael opened the door, and I saw it immediately. Everyone was wearing matching Christmas sweaters, red with little white trees across the chest. Michael, Rebecca, Lily, Owen, Patrice, Rebecca's mother, who I had met maybe 4 times at that point, Sloane, Rebecca's sister, and her boyfriend, all of them. Red sweaters, white trees, a whole coordinated family photo waiting to happen. I was wearing a navy blue cardigan I had bought at Kohl's in November. Nobody said anything about it. Michael hugged me and took my coat and said, "Come on in, Mom." And the night moved forward the way nights do. We had dinner. The kids opened presents. Rebecca's mother sat at the end of the table and talked about her garden. At some point, Rebecca said, "Okay, everyone, let's get a family photo before the kids crash." And they all arranged themselves in front of the fireplace in their matching red sweaters. And someone's phone was propped up on the mantle, and they counted to 3 and smiled. I was standing by the kitchen doorway holding a glass of eggnog. Nobody asked me to step in. Afterward, I asked Michael quietly, "Just the two of us in the kitchen. Did y'all plan the sweaters in advance?" He looked a little caught just for a second, and then he said, "Oh yeah, Rebecca did a group order a few weeks back. Didn't think about the shipping timeline to your place. Sorry, Mom." I said it was fine, I smiled. And I meant it mostly. I drove home 6 hours on December 26th with the radio off. I told myself it was an oversight. People get busy. Details fall through the cracks. I almost believed it. The second sign was a birthday cake. Owen turned 6 in March of 2023. I had been baking birthday cakes for that boy since the day he came into this world. I was not about to stop now. I made his favorite, the one he had asked for specifically the year before. Yellow cake, chocolate frosting, with the little sprinkles on top, that he called the good ones. I spent 4 hours on it. Used Gerald's recipe, the one we had made at the bakery for years, the one that never once came out wrong. I packed it carefully in the carrier I had saved from the bakery, drove it up to Portland, carried it through the front door with both hands. Rebecca met me in the entryway. She looked at the cake. She smiled, that particular smile she had that was warm on the surface and just slightly too polished underneath. "Oh, Dot," she said. "How sweet. I actually already ordered one from this amazing little patisserie downtown. Owen is so into dinosaurs right now, so they made it look like a volcano. It's pretty incredible." Rebecca took the cake from my hands and carried it to the kitchen, on the counter next to the coffee maker. Not on the table, not with the other food, just on the counter, off to the side, like something that needed to be dealt with later. For the entire party, nobody mentioned my cake. The volcano cake came out, and Owen lost his mind over it, and honestly, it was very impressive. I will give her that. There were candles coming out of the top and everything. Everyone sang. Everyone laughed. At the end of the night, when I was getting my coat, I felt a small hand slip into mine. Lily, 8 years old, looking up at me with those serious dark eyes she got from Gerald's side of the family. Grandma, she whispered, I had a piece of your cake. It was the best one there. I squeezed her hand. I did not trust my voice right then, so I didn't say anything. I just held on to that little hand for a moment longer than I needed to. Lily always saw what the adults decided not to. The third sign was Thanksgiving, November 2023. I found out the location the afternoon before, not a week before, not a few days before, the afternoon before, when I was already halfway through making a sweet potato casserole, Rebecca's mother's house, which was fine. I didn't have a problem with that. People host in different places, that's normal. What got me was finding out about it the way I did, which was Michael texting me at 4 in the afternoon on Wednesday to say, oh, hey, did Rebecca not send you the address? We're doing it at Patrice's this year. I said, no, she didn't send it. He sent me the address and said, see you tomorrow. And that was the end of that conversation. I showed up with my casserole and a pie I had also made because I always brought two things. Gerald taught me never to show up with just one dish. He said it was the sign of a person who wasn't really committed to the meal. Patrice's house was full and loud and warm, and the table was beautifully set. Patrice sat at the head of it, which again, her house, her table, that made complete sense. Sloane had brought a friend, a woman she worked with. At some point during the evening, Sloane was introducing her around the table. She got to me and she said, and this is Michael's mom. Not Dot, not Dorothy, not my mother-in-law or Owen and Lily's grandmother, Michael's mom, like a footnote, like a category. I smiled and said it was nice to meet her. They moved on to the next person. I ate my casserole, and I watched my grandchildren, and I laughed at the right moments, and nobody would have known anything was wrong. But I drove home that night, and I sat in my driveway for a long time before I went inside. I was starting to understand something I did not want to understand. Here's what I want to say about those 3 moments, and I want to say it clearly. None of them, on their own, would have been enough. People forget to order extra sweaters. Cakes get displaced at busy parties. Names get fumbled in crowded rooms. These things happen, and they don't always mean something dark underneath them. But patterns mean something. Patterns don't lie, and the pattern I was seeing was this. I was being moved, slowly and quietly, from the center of this family to the edge of it, not all at once, just a little at a time. Enough that each individual step seemed almost reasonable, almost explainable, until you looked at all of them together and saw the direction they were all pointing. Out. Then came November 2023, and the phone call that I convinced myself was a good thing. I had shared the Alaska cruise plans with Michael over the phone earlier that month. He was genuinely excited. I could hear it in his voice, that real unguarded excitement he'd had as a kid when something actually got through to him. He talked about taking Lily kayaking and teaching Owen to spot wildlife, and he mentioned his dad without being prompted. Said he thought his dad would have loved this. That was a real moment between us. I held on to it. That evening, he must have told Rebecca, because the following Tuesday she called me. Her voice was warm and efficient at the same time, which was a thing she could do that I had never quite figured out how to do myself. Dot, she said, I've been thinking about the cruise and I really want to help. Coordinating group travel is literally what I do for work. Cabin assignments, excursions, dinner reservations, all of that logistical stuff, I can handle it in my sleep. You've already done the hard part by handling the booking and the finances. Let me take care of the rest. I thought about it for maybe 5 seconds. Then I said yes. I said yes because it sounded like an olive branch. I said yes because I thought maybe this was Rebecca's way of trying. I said yes because I was tired of doing everything alone, and here was someone offering to help, and I had not yet fully learned, what it cost to let certain people into certain things. That's so kind of you, Rebecca, I said. I really appreciate it. Of course, she said, we're family, we're family. From November 2023 through the summer of 2024, Rebecca handled the operational details of the trip: cabin assignments, shore excursion bookings, dinner reservation, slots, the passenger manifest that got submitted to the cruise line. All of it filtered through her. I got occasional updates. Things are looking great. The kids are going to love the whale watching excursion. I found a great dinner package for the Juneau night. I paid for everything. My name was on the contract. Those two facts did not change, but everything in between those two facts Rebecca owned, and I told myself this was fine. I told myself this was what family did. They divided up the work, they played to their strengths. Rebecca was good at logistics. I was good at showing up and loving people. We each had our lane. I did not understand yet that she was not driving in her lane. She was slowly, methodically moving me out of mine. The last easy moment I remember was a Wednesday in August. I had just processed the final payment for the cruise, sat at my kitchen table with my reading glasses on, watching the confirmation come through on the screen. $28,000, 2 years of planning, 30 years of a marriage that deserved to be honored properly. I felt good. I felt genuinely, deeply good in a way I had not felt in a long time. I texted Michael, final payment done. Can't believe we're really doing this. He texted back 12 minutes later, can't wait, Mom. I put my phone down and went to make a cup of tea. And I stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the yard, and I thought about Gerald. I thought about that brochure. I thought about the look on Lily's face when she saw her first glacier. 9 days later, at 10:47 in the evening, my phone buzzed on that same kitchen table. And I want to tell you exactly what that felt like. You know how sometimes you're driving on a road you've driven 100 times, and everything is completely normal, and then all of a sudden there's something in the road that shouldn't be there, and your brain takes just a half second too long to process it because it just doesn't fit with everything around it? That half second. That's what it felt like something was in the road that had no business being there. The text came in at 10:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I looked at the clock on the microwave when my phone buzzed. I had a habit of doing that, checking the time when something interrupted the quiet. Gerald used to tease me about it. You always want to know what time it is, Dot. Like you're keeping score on the day. Maybe I am, I used to tell him. Maybe I just want to know where I am in things. I was at the kitchen table. I had been sitting there for about an hour, going through the bag I had started putting together for Lily and Owen. Not a bag I was planning to bring myself, just things I wanted to send along with Michael. Motion sickness patches for Owen, the kind you put behind the ear, the kind the pediatrician had recommended when Owen was 4 and got carsick on every drive longer than 20 minutes. A small bottle of children's sunscreen I had bought specifically because it was fragrance-free and Owen had sensitive skin. A little notebook and colored pencils for Lily because that girl would draw on anything, napkins, paper bags, the back of her hand, and I thought she might want something nice to sketch in on the ship. I was taping the patches into a small Ziploc bag when the phone buzzed. I picked it up without thinking much about it. Expected it to be a spam text or maybe May sending me something funny from Facebook, the way she did sometimes late at night. It was Michael. Mom, I've been trying to figure out how to say this, and I'm just going to say it because there's no good way. Rebecca and I talked, and we think it would be better if this trip stayed just us and her family. The kids do better with a consistent group dynamic, and adding more people into the mix changes things in ways that are hard to manage. You've already done so much, and we really do appreciate everything. We want to make it up to you. I promise we'll plan something just for us soon, soon. I read it once. I read it again. Then I read it a third time. Slowly, the way you reread something when you understand every individual word, but the whole sentence still doesn't make sense. Adding more people into the mix, more people. I was not more people. I was his mother. I was the person who had planned this trip, funded this trip, dreamed about this trip for 2 years. I was the person who had saved Gerald's brochure and carried it across state lines in my purse, like a promise I intended to keep. I set the phone down on the table. I looked at the Ziploc bag of motion sickness patches in my hand. I set that down too. I picked the phone back up and I typed, Michael, I planned this trip. For your father, for all of us. I put the phone down again and waited. 6 minutes passed. I know because I watched the microwave clock the whole time. Then I know, Mom. And that means everything. It really does. But it just got complicated. There's a lot of moving parts with Becca's family, and adding another dynamic on top of that is a lot. You understand. Not a question, a period at the end, like it was already settled, like my understanding was simply a given in something he could count on the way you count on gravity. I sat there in my kitchen with the under cabinet lights on and everything else dark, and I did not cry. I want to be honest about that because I think people expect a moment like that to produce immediate tears, and it didn't. What it produced was something quieter, and in some ways worse than tears. It produced a kind of stillness, like the air pressure in the room had changed. I had been erased from a trip I had built from scratch, and my son had told me about it in a text message at 10:47 at night, 9 days before departure, and ended it with "you understand," like I was someone who could be managed with the right phrasing. I did not respond again, I just sat there. And after a while, I reached over and I opened my laptop. I don't know exactly what I was planning to do. I think I just needed to look at something concrete, something real that I could point to. Because Michael's text had this quality to it, this smooth, polished quality that made me feel like maybe I had misunderstood something, like maybe I was overreacting. That's a thing that happens to you when you've been slowly moved to the edges of something. You start to doubt your own read on situations. You start to wonder if maybe the problem is your perception rather than what's actually happening. I needed to see something that was not a matter of perception. I opened my email. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I just started scrolling, and that is when I saw it. An email from the cruise line, sent at 6:23 p.m. that same evening. Subject line, passenger manifest update, booking confirmation. 6:23 p.m., 4 hours and 24 minutes before Michael sent me that text. I opened it. It was a standard confirmation email, the kind they send when passenger information gets updated in the system. A list of names, cabin assignments, departure details. I scrolled down to the passenger list. Michael Callahan, Rebecca Callahan, Lily Callahan, Owen Callahan, Patrice Whitmore, Sloan Whitmore, and one line that said Whitmore guest, TBD, next to the fourth cabin. 7 entries. I read through the list twice. Then I scrolled back up and read it again from the beginning, slowly the way you do when you are looking for something you might have missed. I had not missed anything. My name was not on that list. Dorothy Callahan, dot. The person whose name was on the contract. The person whose money had paid for every single cabin, every shore excursion, every dinner reservation on that ship. The person who had spent 2 years planning this as a tribute to her late husband. Not there, not anywhere. And here is the part that hit me hardest, harder even than the text message, harder than seeing the list itself. The email was sent at 6:23 p.m. Michael's text came at 10:47 p.m. That meant Rebecca had already contacted the cruise line and had my name removed from the passenger manifest hours before Michael worked up the nerve to text me. The decision had already been made. The paperwork had already been changed. Michael's message, with its "I've been trying to figure out how to say this," was not the beginning of the conversation. It was the notification. I had not been consulted. I had not been discussed with. I had simply been deleted, the way you delete a line item from a spreadsheet when it's no longer needed, and then informed of it afterward as a courtesy. I sat back in my chair, the refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car went past on the street. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and stopped. I thought about the motion sickness patches on the table. I thought about Owen at 4 years old, green in the face on the highway, pressing his little head against the car window. I thought about the notebook I had bought for Lily to draw in on the ship. Then I closed the laptop. Not fast, not hard. Slowly, carefully, the way you close something you're not sure you'll be able to open again without falling apart. I turned off the under cabinet lights. I walked down the hall to my bedroom. I did not call Michael. I did not text Rebecca. I did not call my sister or May or anyone else. I got into bed in the dark, and I lay there on Gerald's side of the mattress, which I had started sleeping on after he died, because it still smelled like him for a while, and now it just smelled like me, and I stared at the ceiling. I did not sleep for a long time. But I want to tell you something about that night, something that surprised me then, and still surprises me a little now. At some point in those dark, quiet hours, something shifted. Not into anger, not into some kind of vengeful clarity where I sat up in bed and knew exactly what I was going to do. It was subtler than that. It was more like the way the sky looks just before dawn, when it's still dark, but there's something on the eastern edge that wasn't there an hour ago. Not light yet, just the suggestion of it. I thought about Gerald. I thought about what he would say if he were lying here next to me right now, that engineer's brain of his working through the situation, the way he worked through every situation methodically, without panic, looking for where the load was distributed wrong. And I thought about something else. I thought about whose name was on that contract. Mine. I was the account holder. Sandra at the travel agency had said it clearly when we set everything up. All modifications, all cancellations, all changes required authorization from the primary account holder. That was me. Rebecca could update a passenger manifest because I had let her coordinate those details, but she could not cancel the booking. She could not transfer it. She could not do anything to the core reservation without my signature. They had taken me off the list, but they had not taken the list from me. I did not make any decisions that night. I want to be clear about that. I was not lying there plotting anything. I was just exhausted and hurt and holding on to the one solid thing I could find in all of it, my name on a contract. Gerald's voice in my head saying, always have a backup plan, Dot. And the slowly arriving knowledge that whatever came next was going to be my choice. Not Rebecca's, not Michael's, mine. I finally fell asleep sometime after 3 a.m. When I woke up, it was 5:30. Early light coming through the curtains, birds starting up outside. I lay there for a minute and let myself feel the full weight of it. Not the anger, though that was there. Not the humiliation, though that was there too. Just the grief of it. The specific grief of loving people who have decided quietly and without telling you that your love is a resource rather than a relationship. Then I got up. I made coffee. And I went to Gerald's office. Gerald's office was the smallest room in the house, 8 by 10 feet, maybe. He had always joked that he got the closet and I got the rest of the house, which was not entirely untrue. But he loved that room. He had his drafting table in there from his early engineering days, even though he had not used it professionally in 20 years. He kept it because he said a man needed a surface big enough to spread things out on, to see the whole picture at once instead of piece by piece. I had not changed anything in that room since he died. The calendar on the wall still showed March 2021. I knew I should take it down. I had thought about it many times. But every time I stood in front of it, I thought, if I take it down, then that month is really over, and something in me was not ready for that month to be over. I sat down in his chair. It was an old wooden desk chair with a cushion on the seat that had flattened out over the years to almost nothing. Gerald had refused to replace it. Said it had conformed to him specifically and a new chair would just be a stranger. I understood that completely. I understood it even more now, sitting in the shape he had left behind. I put my coffee mug on the desk and I just sat for a minute. Then I started opening drawers, not looking for anything in particular. Or maybe looking for him, which amounts to the same thing when the person is gone. The top drawer had the usual: pens, pencils, a good eraser, a small metal ruler, paper clips in 3 different sizes because Gerald believed in having the right size paper clip for the right size job. The middle drawer had a spiral notebook filled with calculations I could not read, a couple of crossword puzzle books with maybe a third of the puzzles filled in, a rubber band ball he had been adding to since 1997. I picked up the rubber band ball and held it for a minute, set it back down. The bottom drawer was deeper than the others. It had a file folder of old insurance documents, a manila envelope of receipts from the early bakery years that I had no idea why he kept, and underneath all of that, the Alaska cruise brochure, folded in thirds, soft from being handled. The cover photo showed a ship moving through still blue-gray water with mountains behind it. snow on the peaks, a sky that looked almost too dramatic to be real. I set it on the desk, and then I saw the envelope. It was tucked behind the file folder, standing upright against the back of the drawer like it had been placed there deliberately. Small envelope, cream-colored, the kind that comes in a box of generic stationery. My name on the front in Gerald's handwriting for Dot. Open when you need to. I remembered this envelope. Gerald had given it to me in the fall of 2020, when his health had started being something we had to actively manage rather than occasionally think about. He had pressed it into my hand one evening after dinner and said, "Put this somewhere safe. Don't open it unless you really need to." I had asked him what was in it. He said, "Just some things I want you to know." I had put it in his desk drawer because I could not put it anywhere in my own space without thinking about it every day, and I could not think about it every day without coming apart. Putting it in his drawer felt like putting it in his keeping, like he was holding on to it until the right time. I had not opened it in 4.5 years. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. The flap was sealed with a strip of tape, the way Gerald sealed everything, practical and permanent. I opened it. One page, torn from a legal pad. His handwriting, that precise engineer's print that never varied no matter what he was writing. Dot. If you're reading this, something happened and I'm not there anymore. So I want to say some things while I still can, because you know I'm not always good at saying them out loud. I know Michael. I love him. You know I do. But I also know that Boy has always taken the path of least resistance when things get hard. It's not a character flaw, it's just how he's wired. And whoever stands next to him long enough will figure that out and learn how to use it. Don't let anyone take what's yours, Dot. Not the money, not the memories, not your seat at the table. You built that table. You built most of the tables you've ever sat at, and you did it without making anyone feel bad about sitting down, and that is one of the finest things about you, and I need you to know that I see it even when other people don't. The Alaska brochure is in this drawer. I still want to go. Take me with you. And if they won't let you bring me, find someone who will. Someone who actually wants to be there. Someone who knows what it means to show up. I love you more than I ever found the right words for. That was my biggest mistake, not saying it enough. Don't make the same one, Gerald. I sat in that chair for a long time after I read it. The morning light was coming in through the small window above the drafting table, that particular low, slanted light of early fall that makes everything look like it's been painted rather than photographed. It fell across the desk and across his handwriting and across the brochure with its mountains and its too dramatic sky. I did not fall apart. I want to tell you that I fell apart because that is what you would expect, and maybe what I expected too. But I didn't. What happened was something different, something quieter. It was like hearing a key turn in a lock you had forgotten was locked. A small, clean, definitive sound. He knew, he had known. He had written it down in 2020 and sealed it in an envelope and put it in a drawer because he understood better than I did that someday I would need to read it. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. I placed the envelope next to the brochure on the desk. Then I opened the laptop I had brought in with me and pulled up the cruise booking. The contract information was all there. Primary account holder, Dorothy Callahan. Authorized modifications, account holder signature required. Cancel for any reason insurance. Active, valid through departure date. I did the math. The portion of the booking allocated to their cabins and services, not mine, never mine, came to $16,800. 90% of that came back to me under the insurance policy. $15,120. Back to my account within 7 to 10 business days. Enough. More than enough. I picked up my phone and I called May Aldridge. May and I had been friends for 11 years. We met at church, bonded over the fact that we were both the kind of people who showed up early to help set up and stayed late to help clean up, which is a very specific personality type, and we recognized each other immediately. May was 71 years old. Her husband Earl had passed 6 years ago. Her kids were grown and scattered, one in Texas, one in Nevada, one who called every Sunday, and 2 who called when they needed something. She lived alone in a house on Mulberry Street, that she had kept up immaculately for 40 years, and she had not left the state of Tennessee since Earl's funeral in 2018. She picked up on the second ring. Dot, you're calling early. I know. I need to ask you something, and I need you to listen before you answer. All right, I told her everything. The text message, the email, the passenger list with 7 names and none of them mine. I told her about Gerald's letter. I told her about the brochure and what I was thinking. I did not dress it up, and I did not make it smaller than it was. When I finished, May was quiet for 8 seconds. I counted. Then she said, "How long is the cruise?" 7 days. My knees have been giving me trouble since February. The ship has elevators on every deck. I checked the accessibility specs when I booked it. 4 more seconds. I haven't been on a plane since Earl's funeral. I know. I'll be in the seat right next to you the whole way. A longer pause this time. I could hear her breathing. I could hear her thinking it through the way May thought everything through carefully and without rushing. Then she said, "What do I pack for Alaska in September?" I closed my eyes for just a second. "I'll send you a full list tonight." "Okay," she said, simply, like it was settled, like she had been waiting for someone to ask. Carol Pruitt was 65 and had spent the past 14 months fighting breast cancer with the kind of focused, unsentimental determination that I had always admired in her. She had gone through surgery and then chemo, and she had showed up to church in between treatments with her head covered and her chin up, and she never once asked for pity, only for people to please not make a big deal of it. In July of 2024, 6 weeks before any of this happened, her oncologist had given her the all clear. I had been in the waiting room when she came out. She had called me the night before and said, "Dot, I don't want to go alone tomorrow." And I had said, "I'll be there at 8, and I was. I called her now. "Carol, I need to ask you something, and I need you to not say no before you hear me out." She laughed a little. "That is a terrible way to start a conversation." "I know. Alaska, September, 7 days, you, me, May, and one more person I'm about to call." Silence. "My kids think I should be resting. What does your doctor think?" "He says I'm medically cleared for normal activity." A cruise qualifies as normal activity, Carol. People do crossword puzzles on cruise ships. People take naps. It's essentially a floating hotel with better views. My kids will worry. Your kids worried when you drove to the grocery store alone for 6 months, too. At some point, you have to live inside the life you fought to keep. A long breath out. "Then I'm bringing my own pillow. I cannot sleep on hotel pillows, and I assume ship pillows are even worse." "Bring 2 if you want. Bring your whole pillowcase." "I might," she said, and I could hear the smile in it. Ruth Dempsey was the hardest call. Ruth was 69 years old, and she had spent the last 8 years as a caregiver. Her husband Harold had a progressive heart condition that had slowly taken more and more of him over time. His mobility first, then his stamina, then his ability to be left alone for more than a few hours at a stretch. Ruth had done it all. Every appointment, every medication schedule, every 3 a.m. when the breathing got strange, and she lay there next to him, listening to make sure it evened out again. Harold had passed in June, 3 months ago. Ruth was still figuring out who she was without someone to take care of. She picked up on the 4th ring, which for Ruth meant she had seen my name and thought about it before answering. "Dot, Ruth. How are you doing today, honestly?" A pause. "Honestly. Okay, some days are better. I need to tell you something and then ask you something." I told her the story the same way I had told May, straight through without softening it. Ruth listened without interrupting, which was her way. When I finished, she said, "Gerald wrote that in a letter in 2020, in his desk drawer." She was quiet for a moment. "That man loved you right. He did." Another pause. Then, "Dot, I don't know if it's right for me to go somewhere like that. Harold's only been gone 3 months. What are people going to think?" "People are going to think whatever they want to think, regardless of what you do, Ruth. That has always been true, and it will always be true. It feels too soon. I know it does. It feels like I'm not allowed to." And here is where I said something I had not planned to say. It just came out the way true things sometimes do when you stop managing the conversation and just talk. "Harold spent 8 years watching you give up everything to be there for him. Every trip you didn't take, every morning you didn't sleep in. Every time you said no to something for yourself because he needed you. Do you think for one single second that man would want you to spend month 4 sitting alone in that house? The silence that followed was different from the ones before it. Then Ruth said very quietly, "He always said I should see the northern lights someday. Alaska, September. It's not a guarantee, but we've got a real shot." I heard her exhale, long and slow, like she had been holding something in for a while. "I'll have to find my passport," she said. "I don't know where Harold put it last time we renewed. I'll come over and help you look." "Okay," she said, the same word May had used. Simple, settled. "Okay," I said back. I made those 3 calls before 9 in the morning. Then I sat at Gerald's desk for another few minutes, the brochure in front of me, his letter in my hand, the morning light still thin across the room. I thought about what came next, what I was actually going to do, the specifics of it. And then I picked up the phone one more time and called Sandra at the travel agency because it was time to update the reservation. Sandra picked up on the first ring. She was that kind of travel agent, the kind who picked up on the first ring and remembered your name and the names of your grandchildren and the fact that you wanted the cabins on the port side because you had read somewhere that the port side had better views of the glaciers on the inside passage route. "Dot," she said, warm as always. "What can I do for you?" I had thought about how to say this on the walk from Gerald's office to the kitchen. I had considered several versions of it, the apologetic version, the over-explained version, the version where I gave her the whole backstory so she would understand why I was doing what I was doing. I decided on none of those. "Sandra, I need to modify the passenger list on my reservation. I'm the sole account holder, and I'd like to replace the current passengers with 4 new names." A brief pause. Professional, not surprised. Sandra had been doing this long enough that nothing surprised her anymore. "Of course. I just need to verify your account information first. Can you give me the booking number and billing address on file?" I gave her both. She typed for a moment. "And I'll need the last 4 digits of the card used for the original deposit." I gave her those too. "Perfect. You're verified, Miss Callahan. Go ahead with the new passenger names whenever you're ready." I read them out slowly and clearly. Dorothy Callahan, May Aldridge, Carol Pruitt, Ruth Dempsey. I spelled the last names twice because I wanted to make sure they were right. Sandra read them back to me. "That's correct," I said, more typing. A longer pause this time while the system updated. "Okay, Miss Callahan, your passenger manifest has been updated. The new names are confirmed across all 4 cabins and all pre-booked excursions. I'll send a confirmation email to the address on file. Is there anything else you need adjusted? Just one thing. Please send all future correspondence to my email only, not to any secondary contacts." Noted. Done. A small pause. "Miss Callahan, is there anything else I can help you with today?" "No," I said. "I think that covers it." "Thank you, Sandra. You enjoy that cruise," she said. And the way she said it made me think she understood more than I had told her. Some people are just perceptive that way. I hung up. The second call was to the travel insurance company. This one was more procedural, more forms and policy numbers and hold music, but the end result was the same. The cancel for any reason policy I had purchased covered the modification I was making. The agent walked me through the paperwork. I answered the required questions, and when she asked for the reason for the partial cancellation, I said, "Change of travel party," because that was accurate and because I did not owe that insurance company my whole life story. $15,120 back to my account within 7 to 10 business days. I thanked her and hung up. The third thing took the least amount of time. I opened a new email, put Michael's address in the to field, left the subject line blank. I typed one sentence. "Michael, the reservation has been updated. Safe travels. Mom." I read it back once, then I hit send. No explanation, no accusation, no list of everything he had done wrong and everything it had cost me. Just that one sentence, clean and final, like a door closing softly in a quiet house. The time on my laptop said 9:17 in the morning. I closed the computer, stood up, went to the pantry, and took down the bag of all-purpose flour. For the first time in 2 years, since the morning after I sold the bakery and stood in my kitchen, not knowing what to do with my hands, I started making bread. Not for anyone in particular. not to bring somewhere, just because I needed to do something with my hands that I knew how to do, something that made sense, something that Gerald had always said was the best smell in the world. Uh, a house with bread in the oven. I kneaded that dough for 10 minutes, and I did not think about Michael or Rebecca or Alaska or any of it. I just worked the dough and felt it change under my hands and let the morning be what it was. The silence lasted about 4 hours. Then Rebecca called. I watched my phone ring, and I did not pick it up. I was not ready to talk to her yet, and more than that, I did not think a conversation with Rebecca was going to produce anything useful for either of us. Rebecca was an event planner. She was professionally trained to manage difficult situations in real time, to stay calm and redirect and find the angle that worked. I was a retired baker from Franklin, Tennessee. I was not going to outmaneuver her on the phone, so I let it ring. She left a voicemail. I listened to it once, standing in my kitchen with the bread cooling on the counter. Her voice was controlled, warm on the surface the way it always was, but with something underneath it now that hadn't been there before. Something tighter. Hi, it's Rebecca. I think there may have been some kind of mix-up with the cruise reservation. I tried to pull up the booking details, and I'm getting some kind of error, which is probably just a system glitch, but I wanted to check in with you directly. If you could give the cruise line a quick call and sort out whatever the issue is, that would be so helpful. We're leaving in 6 days, and I just want to make sure everything is squared away. Thanks so much. Talk soon. Mix up. System glitch. So helpful. I deleted the voicemail. Then I sliced a piece of bread, put butter on it, sat down at the kitchen table, and ate it while it was still warm. She called the cruise line herself that afternoon. I know this because Sandra called me afterward as a courtesy to let me know that someone had contacted them claiming to be coordinating the booking and requesting access to the account details. I just wanted you to know we followed protocol, Sandra said. She wasn't listed as an authorized contact, so we weren't able to discuss the account with her. She asked to speak with a supervisor. The supervisor told her the same thing. How many times did she call? I asked. 3 times over about 2 hours. Okay, I said. Thank you, Sandra. Of course, Miss Callahan. That evening, Sloane posted a photo on Instagram, her new outdoor jacket, tag still on, laid out next to a pair of hiking boots and a beanie. Caption, said Alaska Prep, with a little mountain emoji. 40-something likes. Several comments saying so exciting and have the best time. I saw it because Lily had once shown me how to look at Instagram without having an account, which Lily thought was very funny and I thought was very practical. I looked at the photo for a moment. Then I put my phone down and went to call May about what to pack for the weather. The next day was quieter. Michael did not respond to my email. Rebecca did not call again. The cruise line confirmation sat in my inbox, 4 names, 4 cabins, everything updated and settled. I helped Ruth find her passport. It was in a shoebox in the closet of the spare bedroom, tucked inside an old birthday card from Harold, the kind with a corny joke on the front. Ruth held the card for a long time before she put it back. She kept the passport. I sent May a packing list, 2 pages. Layering system for cold weather, waterproof outer shell, good walking shoes with grip, motion sickness medication, just in case because the inside passage could get choppy in September. May texted back a thumbs up emoji and then called me 20 minutes later because she didn't know how to buy a waterproof jacket online and needed me to walk her through it. We spent 45 minutes on the phone picking out a jacket, purple with a fleece lining. May said it was the first piece of clothing she had bought for herself in 3 years that wasn't from the clearance rack at Walmart, and she said it with the particular satisfaction of a woman who had been putting herself last for too long and was just now noticing. It was one of the better 45 minutes I'd had in a while. That night I went to bed at 10 and fell asleep faster than I had in weeks. I woke up at 2:11 in the morning, not from a bad dream, not from a noise. I just came awake the way you sometimes do, suddenly and completely, like someone had turned a light on inside my head. My phone was on the nightstand. The screen was lit up. A text from Michael. I picked it up. Mom, Rebecca's asleep. I need to say something, and I need to say it without her seeing it. So I'm going to say it fast. I know what you did. I figured it out this afternoon when the cruise line called. to confirm the updated passenger list, and your name was the only Callahan left on it. I understood immediately. I'm not texting to ask you to change it back. I know you won't, and honestly, I don't think you should. I just need you to know something. I knew this was wrong from the beginning. I knew it when Rebecca first brought it up, and I knew it every day after that. I told myself it was complicated, that there were too many moving parts, that it was easier to just let her handle it. That is not an excuse. I know it's not an excuse. I'm just telling you what happened inside my head, because I think you deserve to know. You should not have found out by text message. You should not have found out at all, because it should never have happened. You planned that trip for Dad. You planned it for all of us. And we took it from you, and we didn't even have the decency to look you in the eye when we did it. I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know if that means anything right now. I don't know if it should, but I needed you to know that I know, and that I'm ashamed of it. I love you, Michael. I read it twice. Then I set the phone down on the nightstand and looked at the ceiling. Here is the complicated truth about that message. It was the most honest thing Michael had said to me in years, maybe longer. It was the Michael I remembered, the boy who could not look me in the eye when he had done something wrong, who always eventually came to find me and said it plain. That boy had still been in there somewhere. He had just been buried under years of choosing the easier thing, and I was glad he had sent it. I was genuinely glad. But I also understood something clearly in that moment. An apology sent at 2 a.m. while your wife is asleep is not the same as standing up in the daylight. It is a true thing, but it is a private thing. And private things, however true, do not change public situations. I picked the phone back up and I typed, I know, Michael. Get some sleep. Not I forgive you. Not we'll figure this out. Not it's okay. Just I know, because I did know all of it. The love in the message and the limitations of it. The sincerity and the timing. I knew what it was and I knew what it wasn't, and both of those things could be true at the same time. I put the phone back on the nightstand, and then, for the first time since the night I received that first text message, I cried. Not loudly. Not the kind of crying that takes over your whole body. Just quiet tears in the dark, the kind that come when something has been held too tightly for too long and finally gets to be set down. I cried for Michael, who loved me and could not figure out how to show it when it cost him something. I cried for Gerald, who had known all of this and written it down in a letter because when he wanted to make sure I had it when I needed it. I cried for the trip I had imagined for 2 years, the one where we all stood on a deck together and felt something true. And then I stopped crying, and I felt lighter than I had in a long time, and I went back to sleep. I found out later, through something Lily told me on the phone weeks after all of this was over, that Rebecca had booked new flights to Seattle the morning after my email. She had not told Michael until the night before they left. Her plan was to go to the port in person, speak directly with the cruise line supervisor on site, and use the original booking documentation to make her case. Rebecca was an event planner. She had spent 15 years solving problems in real time, showing up in person and making things work through sheer force of preparation and presence. She genuinely believed that being physically there would change the outcome. Michael had known it was not going to work. He told me later he had known from the moment she booked the flights. But he had bought his ticket and packed his bag and put the kids in the car, because that is what Michael did. He went along. He always went along. Lily did not know any of this. She just knew they were going to see a ship, and she was excited about that, and she had saved the window seat in the Uber for her grandmother, because in her 9-year-old mind there was simply no version of this story where her grandmother was not coming. That detail, the window seat, I did not know about yet. I would find out later. On a ship in Alaska at 9:52 in the evening from a text message sent from a phone number I did not recognize. But that comes later. I fell asleep before 3, and when I woke up, it was time to go to Seattle. We flew into Seattle the evening before departure. I had booked us into a hotel 4 blocks from the port. Nothing fancy, clean rooms, and a breakfast that started at 6 a.m., which was what I needed. May had never flown alone before, and I had promised to be with her the whole way. So I drove to her house at 4 in the morning and we rode to Nashville Airport together in the dark, two women with rolling suitcases and a thermos of coffee between us, talking about nothing important the whole way there, the way old friends can do. On the plane, May held the armrest with both hands during takeoff, not white-knuckling it, just holding on. I put my hand over hers and left it there until we leveled out, and the flight attendant came by with the drink cart, and May ordered a ginger ale and said, well, that wasn't so bad, with the dignified understatement of a woman who had been quietly terrified and was not going to make a production of it. Carol met us at baggage claim in Seattle. She had flown in from Atlanta, connecting through Denver, and she looked tired from the travel, but her eyes were bright in a way I had not seen in over a year. She was wearing a green rain jacket she had bought specifically for the trip and carrying a tote bag that I knew from experience contained at minimum 2 pillows, a heating pad, and a very specific brand of herbal tea that she had been drinking every morning since her diagnosis. Ruth flew in separately and took a car to the hotel. When I knocked on her door that evening, she opened it wearing Harold's flannel shirt over her pajamas. She said she had put it on when she got into the room and just never taken it off. She looked embarrassed about it for just a second, and then she looked at me, and I guess whatever she saw in my face told her she did not need to be embarrassed, because her shoulders dropped about 2 inches, and she said, I think I slept better on that plane than I have in 3 months. We had dinner together at a restaurant near the hotel. Nothing special, pasta and bread, and a bottle of wine split 4 ways. We talked about small things. May's new purple jacket, which she had worn to dinner because she loved it that much already. Carol's sketchbook, which she had started filling in on the plane. Ruth's passport photo, which was 8 years old, and she said made her look like a woman receiving bad news, which made all of us laugh harder than was probably proportionate. I looked around that table and I thought, this is already something. Whatever happens tomorrow and whatever happens after that, this right here is already something real. We got to the port at 10:15 the next morning. The terminal was busy the way ports always are on embarkation day, that particular organized chaos of thousands of people, all trying to be in the same place with their luggage at the same time. A steady roar of voices and rolling wheels and announcements over the PA system. May stopped just inside the entrance and looked up at the ship through the terminal windows. It was massive the way ships always are when you see them up close for the first time, that slightly unreal scale that your brain trying to correct, right? Because it doesn't quite believe something that large can float. Lord have mercy, May said quietly. I know, I said, that thing goes in the water? It does. She shook her head slowly. Gerald picked a good one. We got in the check-in line. It moved steadily. Carol was telling Ruth about the sketch she had started on plane, a view of the clouds from the window seat, and Ruth was listening with genuine interest, leaning in a little. May was reading the embarkation day newsletter they had handed us at the door, already identifying which dining options were available for lunch. I was watching my group and feeling something I did not have a precise word for. Not happiness exactly, though happiness was part of it. More like rightness. Like things were arranged the way they were supposed to be arranged. And then I saw Lily. She was standing maybe 25 feet away, near one of the support columns in the terminal, holding the small stuffed bear I had given her for her 8th birthday. Brown bear, worn soft from 2 years of use, one of its button eyes slightly looser than the other. She was looking around the terminal with the bright, distracted energy of a 9-year-old in a new place, taking everything in. She had not seen me yet. I stood still. My eyes moved past her to where the rest of them were. Michael, standing a little apart from the group with Owen asleep against his shoulder, his eyes on the floor. Rebecca at the service counter 30 feet away, Patrice and Sloan flanking her, a folder of documents in Rebecca's hand. I could not hear what was being said, but I could read the posture of the agent behind the counter. That particular careful, neutral expression of someone delivering information that the person in front of them does not want to receive. I watched Rebecca hand over the folder. The agent looked through it, typed something, looked at the screen, typed again, then said something that made Rebecca's chin come up by about half an inch. The agent shook his head. Rebecca said something else. The agent shook his head again and turned the monitor slightly so she could see it, pointing to something on the screen. I knew what was on that screen. 4 names, none of them hers. It was Lily who found me first. She had turned away from the column and was scanning the crowd the way kids do when they are looking for a familiar face, methodically, section by section. And then she stopped. Grandma, not a shout. Just her voice, clear and certain, cutting straight through the noise of that terminal, the way that child's voice had always been able to cut through whatever room she was in. I looked at her. She was looking at me with those serious dark eyes, Gerald's eyes, the ones that always seemed to be processing more than a 9-year-old should have to process. She was not running toward me. She was just standing there, holding her bear, looking at me. And in her face, I could see that she did not understand what was happening, but she understood that something was. And she was waiting for me to tell her it was okay. I looked at her for 3 full seconds. Then I put my hand over my heart, flat against my chest, right over the left side. Held it there for a moment so she could see it. Her eyes stayed on mine. I gave her the smallest nod I had. Then I turned back to May and I said, quietly, Ready May had seen all of it. She was watching me with an expression I did not have the words for then and still don't entirely. Something between heartbreak and steadiness. Ready, she said, and we walked through that gate. I did not look back. I have thought about that choice many times since then. Whether I should have gone to Lily, whether I should have crossed that terminal and knelt down and explained it to her in some way that a 9-year-old could hold. Whether my choosing to walk away from her in that moment, even for the right reasons, was something she would carry. What I decided and what I still believe is this. The most honest thing I could give Lily in that moment was not an explanation. It was the sight of her grandmother walking forward, choosing herself, not falling apart in a crowded port, not begging to be let back in, walking through the gate like a woman who knew where she was going. I hope someday she understands that. I think she already might. The ship was everything Gerald had circled in that brochure. I am not going to spend a lot of time describing it, because this story is not really about the ship. But I want to say this much. There are places in the world that make you understand, in a physical way, how small you are and how briefly you are here, and how that smallness is not a sad thing but a clarifying one. The Inside Passage is one of those places. The air smells like cold salt and pine. The water is a color that has no good name in English, somewhere between gray and green and silver depending on the light. And the mountains come right down to the edge of it, so close you feel like you could reach out from the deck and touch them. You look at all of it, and something in you gets very quiet, the way a room gets quiet when something important is being said. May stood on the deck that first night and looked out at the water for 20 minutes without saying a word. I stood beside her. Eventually she said, I forgot the world was this big. I said, I think that's why we needed to come. She nodded like that settled something. Carol bought a sketchbook at the ship's gift shop and started filling it on day 2. She drew the horizon. She drew Ruth's profile against the window at breakfast. She drew the shape of the wake behind the ship from the stern deck. She told me on the 3rd day that she had not drawn anything in 2 years, that somewhere in the middle of being sick, she had stopped doing things that were just for her, just because she wanted to, and she had not realized how much that had cost her until she picked up a pencil again and felt it come back like an old friend she had been too busy to call. Ruth wore Harold's flannel shirt every evening. During the days she was fully herself, present and curious and genuinely good company, asking questions about every port and every excursion and remembering the answers. But in the evenings, she put that shirt on, and she was allowed to be a woman who was still figuring out how to carry a loss and also still be a person in the world. Nobody made her explain it. Nobody told her it was time to move on. We just let her wear the shirt. On the 3rd day, we reached Glacier Bay. The ship slowed and then stopped in the middle of water that was the color of pewter and glass at the same time. And ahead of us, Marjorie Glacier stretched out white and blue and enormous, calving into the bay with sounds like distant thunder, low booms that rolled across the water and faded slowly like the end of something being said. The air was cold and sharp in the lungs. the kind of cold that makes you feel awake in your whole body. You could smell the ice. I did not know ice had a smell until that morning. Clean and ancient and entirely unlike anything else. I had Gerald's brochure in my coat pocket. I had carried it every day since I took it from his drawer. I took it out and I held it and I looked at the glacier. May was on my left, Carol on my right. Ruth was standing close enough that her shoulder was touching mine. Nobody said anything for a long time. Then May said soft, "It's real." "Yes," I said. "It is." That night I set Gerald's photograph on the table in my cabin. The one from 2018 in front of the bakery, that grin of his aimed at whoever was behind the camera, which was me. I put the brochure open to the Glacier Bay page next to it. I lit 4 small candles, one for each of us. We sat around that table, and I asked each woman to say one thing she wished someone had told her when she was younger. Not advice for other people. Something she needed to hear herself, back when she still had time to do something differently with it. May said, "You are allowed to take up space in this world. Not just the space people assign you, all the space you actually need." Carol said, "Surviving something is not the same as living. Don't stop at surviving. Keep going until you get to the living part." Ruth took a long time. She turned her wine glass in her hands, and she looked at the candles and she finally said, "You can carry someone you love with you without being crushed under the weight of them. Love is not supposed to crush you. It's supposed to hold you up." I looked at Gerald's photograph. I said, "You don't have to earn your place at the table. You helped build the table. Don't let anyone make you forget that." We sat there a long time after that, not talking much. Just 4 women and 4 candles and a photograph of a man who had wanted to come here and finally had. At 9:52 that evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Area code 503. Portland, Oregon. A photo Lily sitting on what looked like a hotel bed, hair a little messy, eyes red at the edges the way kids' eyes get when they have been crying, and then stopped and then almost started again. She was holding her brown bear with one arm. In her other hand, she was holding a piece of paper torn from what looked like a small notebook, and on it, in her careful 9-year-old handwriting that still mixed print and cursive, "Grandma, I found your number in Dad's phone. I miss you. Why aren't you here? I saved you the window seat, but you didn't come." In the background of the photo, soft and slightly out of focus, Michael was sitting in a chair by the window, head down, not looking at the camera, not stopping her. I sat with that photo for a long time. That child had gone into her father's phone, found the number saved under Gerald's trip, and sent me a message because nobody else was going to. 9 years old and already doing the thing the adults in her life could not bring themselves to do. Already reaching across the distance that the grown-ups had created and saying, simply and without strategy, "I miss you. Why aren't you here? I saved you the window seat." I pressed my hand flat against my chest the same way I had in the port terminal, and I held it there. Then I put the phone down and I did not reply that night, not because I did not want to, but because what I wanted to say to that child deserved more than a text message in the dark. It deserved something she could hold. The next morning we docked in Juneau. I went into the first gift shop I found, a small place near the pier that smelled like cedar and salt. I looked through the postcard rack until I found the right one. A humpback whale breaching in front of a glacier, water streaming off its back, the ice blue white behind it, the sky wide open above. I bought it and I sat down on a wooden bench outside the shop and I wrote on the back in my best handwriting. Slower than usual because I wanted every word to be right, "Lily. I'm here. The whales are real and the ice is bluer than anything I have ever seen in my life. Your grandpa always wanted to come to this place. I brought him with me. Grandma found her ocean, baby. And someday when you're ready, I'm going to bring you here too. Just the 2 of us. Save me a window seat. All my love, Grandma Dot." I bought a stamp at the post office, 2 doors down, and I mailed it at 10:23 in the morning, standing at a blue mailbox on a street in Juneau, Alaska, with the smell of the sea and the mountains all around me. I did not send anything to Michael. I did not reply to Rebecca. I did not explain myself to Patrice or Sloan or anyone else. Just one postcard for the child who had saved me a window seat. On the last evening of the cruise, I sat on the deck as the sun went down over the water. May was asleep in her chair beside me, mouth slightly open, completely at peace in the way of a woman who had not slept this well in years. Carol was sketching the light on the water, her pencil moving in small, certain strokes. Ruth was at the railing, Harold's flannel shirt on, looking west, and for the first time all trip she did not look like a woman carrying a weight. She just looked like a woman watching a beautiful thing. I looked at all three of them, and I thought about what it had taken to get here, every step of it, the 2 years of planning, and the one text message that unraveled it, and the letter in the drawer, and the 3 phone calls, and the one sentence I sent to my son, and the silence that followed, and the boarding pass in my hand at that port terminal, and the child's voice cutting through the crowd. And I thought about Gerald. I thought about him the way I always do, not as someone who is gone, but as someone who is just in the next room, just out of sight, that close. I think he would have liked this, I said to myself. Not the version we planned, this version, these women, this deck, this light. I think he would have said, "See, Dot, I told you. Always have a backup plan." I smiled at the water. Then I looked up, and I said what I had come here to say. I spent 30 years feeding people, warming them, making sure they had what they needed before they walked out into the world. That was my choice, and I do not regret a single day of it. But somewhere along the way, I confused feeding people with being needed by them. I thought if I gave enough, if I showed up enough, if I made myself enough, I would become too valuable to leave behind. I was wrong about that. You can give everything you have and still be erased, not because you weren't enough, because some people only ever see the gift. They never look up to find the face of the person giving it. Gerald knew. He left me a letter in a drawer in 2020 because he knew that someday I would need to hear it in his words instead of my own. If nobody has left you that letter, let this be it. You do not have to earn your place. You helped build the table you've been sitting at. Don't let anyone make you forget that. Go find your ocean. Take someone with you who actually wants to be there. It's been waiting for you longer than you know.